Richard works as a literature professor at a college. A doctor delivers terrible news. Without treatment, he has only 6 months left to live. Richard arrives at work feeling completely devastated. Throughout the entire day, he tries desperately to accept what's happening to him and come to terms with his fate. Despite his efforts, he simply cannot process this reality. At dinner that evening, Richard sits with his wife Veronica and daughter Olivia. He plans to share the news about his terminal illness, but before he can speak, Olivia makes an unexpected announcement. She's attracted to women. Veronica responds by laughing it off. Richard takes a different approach and shows support for his daughter. This creates tension between Veronica and Olivia, leading to an argument. Feeling upset, Olivia storms out, which leaves Richard alone with his wife. Veronica then drops another bombshell. She's been having an affair with Henry, who happens to be Richard's boss. She explains this is all part of her strategy to get promoted. Richard expresses shock at her choice of Henry, commenting that he considers the man to be completely worthless. Veronica doesn't agree with this assessment and prepares to leave. Before walking away, she asks what he's been attempting to say all through dinner. Richard quickly deflects with a joke, mentioning something absurd about being sorry for having only 2 eggs. The following day, Richard stands before his class delivering a lecture. He mentally evaluates each student, determining who deserves to continue in his course. Students who don't meet his standards are welcome to leave. He'll give them automatic passing grades. The remaining students will face a different challenge, reading just 1 book and presenting their thoughts to the class. Following this announcement, the majority of students get up and exit, while Richard continues making harsh comments about them. Among those who remain, Richard spots a student focused on feminist issues. He makes it clear he has zero interest in feminism and refuses to discuss gender inequality right now. Before dismissing the class, Richard announces the session is cancelled because he needs to release some pent-up emotions. He adds that if anyone knows where to obtain marijuana, they should visit his office. After making this statement, Richard exits and closes the door, leaving his students completely stunned. Later, Richard meets his closest friend Peter at a bar for drinks. He requests Peter's assistance in arranging a leave of absence, then reveals his terminal diagnosis. Peter responds with sympathy and attempts to offer comfort, but Richard tells him to stop showing pity. On the next day, Richard talks to Veronica about keeping their marital issues private from Olivia. He offers Veronica total freedom to continue seeing her lover, but declares he won't remain faithful either. The two have a surprisingly pleasant exchange while getting intoxicated on a combination of alcohol and medication. When Olivia brings a friend home that evening, she discovers her parents in a terrible condition. She quickly takes her friend elsewhere, while her parents keep drinking and enjoying themselves. Later that night in their bedroom, Veronica expresses regret over how poorly she handled Olivia's confession. During his next lecture, Richard reconnects with the students who stayed in his class. He singles out a young woman named Claire and asks about her background. She reveals an interesting connection. She's Henry's niece, the same Henry who's sleeping with Richard's wife. However, Claire mentions she doesn't care for her uncle much either. Richard proposes moving their lesson to a different setting, a local pub. Once there, he begins sharing various life lessons with his students. When a waitress comes to their table, Richard starts flirting with her. The waitress seems interested and flirts back. Richard boldly announces his intention to be unfaithful to his wife immediately, right in the bathroom. He encourages the students to enjoy themselves while he disappears to the restroom with the waitress. Meanwhile, Veronica is spending time with Henry. After returning to the table, Richard instructs the students to leave the waitress a generous tip. He also assigns specific reading material to the feminist student. His behavior clearly shocks all the students. At a later family meal, Richard recommends that Veronica make amends with Olivia. Their daughter agrees to accept the apology. Another day of classes begins. The feminist student addresses Richard and her fellow classmates, sharing her thoughts on the assigned reading. Richard observes that she's beginning to show positive changes. Shortly after, a different student visits Richard's office, bringing complimentary special cupcakes. Richard expresses gratitude and samples them. This student then begins flirting and proposes a physical encounter. Richard requests whiskey and accepts this unusual proposition. Back at home, Richard has a conversation with Olivia. He inquires whether she feels happy in her romantic relationship. Olivia confirms she's very content. This makes Richard feel both delighted and proud of his daughter. During another class session, Richard takes all his students outside onto the college lawn. They proceed to consume various substances while drinking alcohol together. Peter reaches his limit, watching Richard's self-destructive behavior, and brings him to a cancer support group. Richard listens as other patients tell their stories, then bluntly states they're all wasting the little time they have remaining. He proposes they abandon this and go have actual fun instead, but nobody accepts his suggestion. Richard wishes them luck and leaves with Peter for a pub. After consuming considerable amounts of alcohol, Richard explains his plan to Peter. Rather than waiting around for death, he wants to embark on a journey. Claire happens to enter the same pub. Richard arranges for a taxi to take the intoxicated Peter home. Claire suggests having another round of drinks with Richard. She selects a song, and Richard opens up about his terminal condition. Claire expresses admiration for Richard and invites him to dance. While dancing together, Claire leans in attempting to kiss him, but Richard suddenly passes out and needs emergency medical attention. After returning from the hospital, Veronica questions Richard about his whereabouts. He offers an apology without revealing anything about his health crisis. His work performance continues to deteriorate. Henry summons Richard to his office and delivers threats about terminating his employment due to recent conduct. Richard counters by revealing his knowledge of the affair, then threatens to inform Henry's wife. To ensure Richard's silence, he demands sabbatical leave, leaving Henry with no alternatives. In class, Claire speaks to everyone about her perspective. She emphasizes how crucial and necessary love is in the world, while looking toward Richard with sorrowful eyes. Richard wraps up the lesson by discussing the importance of living authentically. He argues that failing to do so renders everything pointless. While alone in his office, Richard experiences a medical episode and collapses. Peter discovers him lying on the floor. Richard asks his friend to accompany him to church. There, Richard opens his heart to Peter about his reflections on life. The conversation feels like Richard is bidding farewell to his closest friend. Peter becomes overwhelmed emotionally and begins weeping. The two men embrace each other, attempting to provide mutual comfort. Some time passes, and Henry organizes a company dinner party. Richard walks straight to Henry's wife and kisses her passionately on the mouth, right in front of both their spouses. Henry acts as though nothing unusual has occurred. While everyone is eating, Richard gets to his feet and makes a public announcement about his terminal illness. He drops clear hints about Henry's affair with his wife. He also publicly thanks Peter for years of genuine friendship. Despite acknowledging Veronica's betrayal, Richard declares he feels fortunate to have her as his wife. His love for her remains as strong as it ever was. As the dinner concludes, Richard shares a final moment with his wife. He urges Veronica to pursue happiness always. Richard embraces his crying wife and gazes at her lovingly one last time. They part ways after this emotional goodbye. When Richard arrives home, he finds himself unprepared for Olivia's unexpected visit. His daughter appears heartbroken because her girlfriend was unfaithful. Richard attempts to console her by pouring drinks for them both. Olivia senses something is wrong and asks her father what's happening. Richard finally reveals the truth about his diagnosis. During their farewell, Richard advises his daughter to stay true to her path and never stray from it. He emphasizes how immensely proud he feels of her. Richard admits he's going to miss her tremendously. Olivia stands outside on the porch, watching her father sit in his car. Richard blows a kiss through the air toward his daughter as she watches him prepare to leave. He drives away from their home. At a traffic intersection, Richard pauses and stares ahead for several moments. Then he pulls away from the road and continues driving straight forward, selecting his own direction in life. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.